Elon Musk has announced that he's creating a new third party called the America Party with the goal of disrupting the hold that the current two-party system has on the federal government. He will be in a lot of company with over 200 registered third parties, roughly. There's a lot of options out there, but sadly, most of them have absolutely no nationwide success or even consistent ballot access. The biggest parties are the Green Party, the Libertarian Party, the Constitution Party, and the Natural Law Party. It should be noted that of the biggest third parties, the Libertarian Party currently only has just over 700,000 registered voters, and that accounts for 0.44% of all registered voters. So, big task ahead of anyone who wants to create a viable third party, between all the patchwork of different requirements for every state, the financial hurdles, the legal hurdles, the just recognition aspect of it. It's a lot. However, it should be noted that the current political party in power, the gallant old party, the Republicans, were once a minor third party until a certain someone became president. So you never know what will happen. It should be noted that New York State has a law that forbids the word American or any variation of it to be on the ballot as part of a party name. I mean, obviously, you could see the logic of wanting to exclude America, the America Party, the American Party. I haven't looked, though, into the history and the legislative intent of that law, but that could be a roadblock should the America Party go forward. I'm sure there's other states. It's funny, I always thought, it's like famously Ben Franklin wanted the turkey to be our national mascot. I'm not suggesting let's do a turkey party or a gobble gobble or anything like that, although I think a gobble gobble party kind of sounds funny. It just makes you reflective, because okay, what would be the icon of this America Party? Would they want to use the American Eagle? Again, could see some confusion there, so I can understand if maybe there'd be some restriction on that. But it gets you thinking, what would you want your little spirit animal to be? What would you pick for your party icon if you had to, if you could choose? And what would you name it? I have a few ideas. I don't know. Obviously, I have no desire to form a political party, but I have some ideas. The last third-party candidate to actually win a presidential election was Abraham Lincoln in 1860 by the then minority third-party Republican Party. In 1912, Teddy Roosevelt won with 27.4% of the vote for the Progressive Party, which is more popularly known as the Bull Moose Party. Who doesn't love Teddy? 80 years later, Ross Perot, a billionaire, won 18.9% of the vote as an independent candidate. He would go on to create the Reform Party, but in 92, he had the most success that anyone's now had in modern times. Third parties have had a major influence on U.S. political and policy debates in Congress. Now, for the record, currently there are only 2 independent senators in Congress, Bernie Sanders and Angus King. But just shows that there are ways for a minor voice to have a major impact. The socialists advocated for women's suffrage movement. Also, them, along with the Populist Party, advocated for child labor laws and the 40-hour work week, which actually led to the Fair Labor Standards Act. So it is possible, when you focus on an issue, especially one that is maybe ignored, you can have a major impact. And it is, again, worth noting that the minor third party, the Republicans, ran on an anti-slavery campaign, which led to Abraham Lincoln winning the presidency. So focusing on a policy that is favorable and popular is kind of a good idea. Third-party candidates are at a disadvantage because of campaign finance laws, rules that dictate who can enter a presidential debate, media attention, exposure, and just an unwillingness to change the system. The United States is a 50-state incubator, so to speak, a patchwork of different laws and policies and programs and regulations, and nothing is more apparent about that system than when a third-party candidate tries to run for a federally elected position, notably president. For example, when Ralph Nader announced in February of 2004, February of 2004, that he would seek the presidential nomination, he was required to obtain over 1.5 million signatures to appear in the ballot in all 50 states. Some of those signature requirements were required by as early as May of 2004. just to give you an idea. February, May, April, March, April, May. Not a lot of time. For example, one of the most restrictive laws is in Georgia, where a congressional candidate outside of the 2 major parties must gather 27,000 signatures from their district before they can be put on the general ballot, election ballot. This law has successfully kept third-party candidates off the general election ballot since the law was enacted in 1943. There's a big push for restricting ballot access for third parties because some in the 2-party major system feel that it's, they're spoiler candidates. They're stealing their votes. I don't like that argument, personally. First off, I think it's my vote, my choice, and if you run on a good platform, you're going to win. So I don't like keeping people out. Okay? If anything, whether it's Libertarian or Green or Musk's America Party, which is supposedly going to preach some form of fiscal responsibility. I don't know if that's the case, but it's maybe. And that brings that policy to the equation. And that's a good thing, similar to the socialists with the women's suffrage movement or the populists with the Fair Labor Standards Act, which every current employee benefits from. That voice, that however small, is a good thing. Also, campaign finance laws say that a political party can only get government funding to run in a race if they receive a certain percentage of the votes from the previous election. This has left many a third-party candidate out to fund their own campaigns. Chase Oliver didn't get the required percentage. Joe Jorgensen didn't get the required percentages. These are libertarian candidates, 2024, 2020. And that creates a funding gap to where you have to raise funds yourself and hope you get the media exposure you need in order to then get more funds. It's a chicken or egg scenario, truly. There is a increased resistance to ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting, just to explain, allows voters to rank the candidates 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. by order of their preference. And then in each round, whoever one of the candidates is the least, if no one has gotten the majority, to be clear, then whoever has the least amount of votes is eliminated from the ballot. So for example, say my first choice is the candidate that gets the least amount of votes. He's eliminated, and so then my vote moves to my second choice. This is good. And it keeps going until someone gets the majority. This is a good thing, because the biggest criticism someone has in saying that they don't want to vote for a third-party candidate is what? They don't want to waste their vote. This eliminates that, to where you can vote for the candidate that best aligns with your policy views, your philosophy, your morals, your whatever metric you use, without fear that that vote is wasted on someone else. Because if your first choice doesn't make it, you got your second choice right there. I think it's a smart system. I think that this should be how it's done. Our Maine, Alaska, they're embracing it. It should be noted that 17 states, including Tennessee, have a statewide ban on ranked choice voting. So there's a long way to go. I'm a strong advocate in favor of it, and I wish that my state would embrace it. But without the requisite media attention on the issue, it's not really a big issue. But brings up another good point of media attention. Presidential debates have been around since the 1960s. Most famously, Nixon, JFK decided the election in favor of JFK because of a poor performance. Debates matter. Not just on exposure, but just on presence. A lot of people decide. There have only been 2 third-party candidates in 2 election cycles that have participated in debates. Ronald Reagan in 1980 debated John Anderson, an independent. Carter refused to debate him, and to be clear, Reagan later just debated Carter, but still, he participated. And then the other example, obviously, is probably the most famous and most successful of our modern times, is Ross Perot debated Bush and Clinton in 92. And he went from 7% to 19% based on that debate. Perot was excluded in 96 from the debates. It should also be noted that since 2000, the Commission on Presidential Debates, which is a private organization, has required candidates to be on enough ballots to win the Electoral College and poll at least 15% nationally to qualify. This rule would have disqualified the only 2 third-party candidates that have ever participated in a debate, Anderson, Perot. And obviously their third parties or candidates are routinely excluded from state and local debates as well. I don't think it's unreasonable to say you have to be on enough ballots to actually win the Electoral College. I think that's a fair requirement, although it does bring up a justifiable point in that ballot access is unduly restrictive in some instances. And so you just have to think what's important, what's necessary. I think that if more third-party candidates participated in the debates, they would get more votes. They would have more exposure, more knowledge. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, as we've seen in the past historical examples, even if a third-party candidate doesn't get to the highest office as president, they can have an impact. And that's why I think where we're going with this is a smart idea, similar to the socialists and the populists. I love how I keep referencing the Socialist Party. Socialist is not a good term. But anyway, that's history. You can't ignore history. For a third party to succeed in today's political landscape, the most viable strategy, I think, would be to focus on a single impactful issue that resonates across party lines. And I think there's several that are ripe for the picking, just as third parties have influenced public policy in the past. Rather than going for the gold and trying to win the presidency, like the Green Party does every 4 years with Jill Stein, just have a more strategic path on targeting a few Senate and congressional seats to build and take advantage of this razor-thin majority that, as of right now, the Republicans have, and if the Democrats ever regain power, they would probably have a razor-thin majority too, either way, and be able to have influence. I mean, look at this last example of the big, beautiful bill. Vice President Vance had to be the tie-breaking vote in order to get the bill passed. That's just how narrow these things are. And then from that, build up legitimacy, viability, visibility, voter trust, voter confidence, your network, your grassroots network, and go from there. And, this isn't an endorsement of Musk, but it does appear that's kind of what he's doing. His goal is to limit to certain congressional districts. He said one way to execute on this would be a laser focus on just 2 to 3 Senate seats and 8 to 10 House seats. Given the razor-thin legislative margins, that would be enough to serve as a deciding vote on contentious laws, ensuring that they serve the true will of the people. I think that's a great idea. I think that's the way forward. This isn't trying to be, it is a political video. We're talking about politics, but it's not trying to, lean one way or the other. I think whether you lean left or lean right, you can acknowledge that there's a need for other voices to be on not just the national stage, but on the state and local stages too. This is a good thing. And I think it's something that I hope we will see an impact on come midterms. Appreciate you watching. This is a little different than what I normally do. Normally it's just legal and business videos, but trying something different. I thought this was interesting. I majored in political science in college, and this is interesting to me. And hopefully it's interesting to y'all. I would love to hear thoughts and comments on that. And if this is something more to do, or just go back to talking about Tennessee law and Tennessee business. I really appreciate all that have watched, especially my last video that's kind of popped a little bit. And my subscribers, thank you so much. Look forward to seeing where this goes. Thanks. Have a nice day.